Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the fifth chapter of the Gita is titled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So as you know, as we go through every chapter, there is a verse that we try and remember. So who has memorized 1.1? First verse, first chapter. Sunil has, Ravi has. Who else? You memorized? A little bit? Okay, let's hear it. Dhritarashtra. Very good, very good. Do you want to say it? 1.1.
Dhritarashtra Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samveta Yuyutsavah Mamakah Pandavaschaiva Kimma Kuruvata Sanjaya.
Good, very good. Thank you. Second chapter, who has memorized the verse in the second chapter? Second chapter, verse 12. You have memorized? Okay. Natveva.
Natve vaham jati nasam natvam neme janadipa na cheva na bhavishyama sarve vayamata param.
And the translation?
Never was a time when I did not exist, or the kings there did not exist, nor will ever be a time when we would cease to exist.
Thank you. Third chapter, verse Ravi Prabhu.
Kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvata ahankara vimudatma tattaham yati manyate.
Translation?
Translation is like Prakriti Kriyamanani. If everybody is acting according to their modes of nature, out of false ego, they think that they are the doer.
That's not the translation. That's your translation. Read the translation of Prabhupada. That's in the, yeah. Okay. Yes, to read the translation.
Spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
Thank you. And so this is Shivani is reminded. There's one verse that I asked to memorize. This is in the glorification of the Bhagavad Gita from Gita Mahatmya in the Padma Puran. So can you recite that verse, Shivani?
Ekam shastram devaki putra geetam eko deva devaki putra eva ekam mantras
Tasya
namami yani.
Tasya nama.
Karmapi ekam tasya devasya seva.
Translation?
There is only one book, that is Devaki Put's Gita. There is only one Dev, that is Krishna himself, and there is only one mantra, that is Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then then there is only one duty of everybody to serve Krishna and his lord.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Where is this?
It's in the introduction. It's right at the end of the introduction. And did anybody get a chance to remember the 4th chapter verse 434? Yes, Prabhu?
तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्षन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः.
Translation?
As it is, I can't remember, I just remember the meaning.
Read the translation.
Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, those of you who have not, please do remember the verse. I'll come to each one of you and ask you. So, okay. So we'll start on the 5th chapter summary. So quick recap. In the so just to get the flow of where we are in the Bhagavad Gita, towards the end of the 2nd chapter, Krishna had. So towards the end of the 2nd chapter, Krishna had given what Arjun perceived as contradictory instructions. Krishna asked Arjun that do your duty, your karma, and then right after that he said that best for you is to be involved in the study of the scriptures. So the 3rd chapter opens with Arjun asking Krishna for clarification, and Arjun says that I am bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Firstly, you ask me to give up activities, which is involve myself in Gyan, in study of scriptures, and then you also want to engage me in what Arjun says in this ghastly warfare. So the 3rd chapter, which is titled Karma Yoga, Krishna explains the superiority of karma over Gyan, and he makes many compelling points of why karma is superior to Gyan. So the first point that he makes is that because your senses are active, they need to be engaged, and karma gives that opportunity. Second is that you need to perform activities just to sustain yourself. The third is that karma, if it is properly executed, purifies the practitioner. And finally, Krishna says that karma will protect you against sinful desires. When Arjun says that why doesn't everybody just perform their duty, and Krishna says that it is because of lust only. So the theme in the 3rd chapter is Krishna makes these points to establish the superiority of karma over Gyan, but while he is making these points, he is also establishing the foundation of Gyan. So when Krishna is telling Arjun that you should do your prescribed duties, how does one know what the prescribed duties are? The prescribed duties are determined by what the scriptures tell us. They are not something that we whimsically think of, that this is what we should do. So built into this instruction of perform your prescribed duty is the instruction that study the Vedas in order to understand them. Then when Krishna says that the prescribed duties will purify you, then the instruction that Krishna is also giving is to understand the intricacies of karma. How can one understand the intricacies of karma? By the study of the scriptures. Krishna says that there is vikarma, there is akarma, so there are sinful activities. So one can determine that what is activities that need to be done and should not be done only by submitting oneself to what is known as swadhyay, which is the study of the scriptures. So in this way, while Krishna is glorifying karma, he is also laying the foundation of the need to be to study the scriptures. And in the 4th chapter, which is titled Transcendental Knowledge, Krishna then he distills Gyan from karma and presents it on its own. So in the 4th chapter begins with Krishna giving Arjun knowledge about two things. Knowledge about the Bhagavad Gita. He recites over Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanam Avyavan, that this Bhagavad Gita was spoken millions and millions of years ago by me to the Sun God, and now it's being spoken Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajrishyo, that it was being transmitted by the Rajrishis, by the saintly kings, and now that the disciplic succession is broken, I've come here to re-establish it. So he glorifies the Gita as something that is timeless, and he also glorifies the speaker of the Gita, which is himself. So he talks a little bit about his own position. He says that Janmakaram cha me divyam yo me veti tattvata tyakta deham punarjanmam neti maameti se Arjuna, that Janmakaram cha me divyam, that my janm, my appearance and my karma, my activities, they're all mystical, and one who understands it then does not have to take birth again. And he goes into a little bit of more details. He speaks just 7 verses about himself, because Krishna at this point is not really ready to go into details about himself until Arjuna has been sufficiently purified. But he uses himself as an example to introduce Arjuna to the topic that he really wanted to do, which is karma on the platform of Gyan. So he talks about Nishkam karma. So he uses his own example. He says, look, I'm a really busy person, right? And then he gives all those famous verses that yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhakti bharvata, that every yuga I'm coming again and again, paritranaye sadhunam, and I'm so busy. I'm taking care of my devotees, I'm annihilating the miscreants. And then he says, what's that verse? Tadvid, not Tadvidi. Yeyatam prapadyante tamste bhajamyam, that not only for my devotees and the demons, but yeyatam prapadyante, that whoever surrenders to me in whatever way, I reciprocate to the person, whether devotee, whether demon, whether atheistic, whether agnostic, whether Brahmavadi, Jnanavadi, whichever way they submit to me, I am reciprocating. So Krishna makes this point. He makes 2 points. One is that everybody, whether they like it or not, directly or indirectly, are surrendering to me, and I am reciprocating to them. So he's also making the point that he's very, very involved in so many activities. Chaturvarnya maya seshta guna karma vibhagasha. He says, I am the one who established the Chaturvarna, these 4 divisions of the society. But then he says that I am completely unaffected by it. I am unchanged and I am unaffected. So he is using his own example to show that how can one be completely involved in so many activities but still be completely unchanged. And because he says, he gives 2 reasons. One, he says that I am not attached to the fruits of the activities, and the second is I am not attached to the activity. So he says, because of these 2 reasons, he says I am completely unchangeable, and I am never ever caught up in the cycle of all the activities that I am doing. So Krishna is giving Arjuna an example to follow, that just like I do, you can do. Just like I am performing so many activities, but I am avyayam, I am completely unchangeable. You can also perform so many activities. You can fight the battle, you can kill hundreds and thousands of people, but by being completely detached from them, you will also not be contaminated by any of the sinful reactions. So after establishing Arjuna, giving Arjuna an introduction to Nishkam karma, Krishna takes Arjun to the next phase, which is how does karma lead to Gyan. So he talks about the fact that, and so this is a set of fairly intricate verses, but the essential message that he is giving is that this interplay between karma and Gyan, that when you perform activities, because of that activities you get some realizations. Because of that realization, which is Gyan, you perform further activities, because of which you get further realizations. So in this way, karma becomes Gyan, then Gyan becomes Vigyan, and Vigyan becomes Yoga. So as one's activities and knowledge nourish one another, they deepen. So one may begin by doing activities externally. So I tell somebody that please do this, and because the person has some deference from me, the person may do it. But then as the person does it, then the person himself will get some understanding of why am I doing it, or may inquire why am I doing it and get some answers, and then will do it based on that realizations. And then when he does that on the realization, the activity itself becomes deeper and deeper. So in this way, Krishna says that by one who sincerely follows the process, karma matures into Gyan, and Gyan matures into karma. So he ends chapter 4 by saying by telling Arjun that because Gyan is the underlying foundation in which karma is being performed at deeper and deeper level, it is important for you to be strong in your understanding. Prabhupada in the second chapter he makes this distinction that if one performs activities without understanding, then they are simply rituals. And if one understands but still does not perform activities, that person is simply a mental speculator. So the right mix is that one performs the activities with the understanding by which both grows. The understanding also grows and the depth of the activity also grow. So that's why Krishna, he tells Arjun, the third last verse of the fourth chapter is Ajascha Shraddhanascha Sanshayatma Vinashati Nayam Lokasti Na Paro Na Sukham Sanshayatma. So it's very heavy on Arjun. He says Ajascha Ashraddhanascha, the person who does not have faith. Sanshayatma Vinashati. Sanshayatma is a doubting person. So doubting is a symptom of lack of knowledge. So Sanshayatma Vinashati is destroyed. So Nayam Lokasti Na Paro. Nor in this life, nor in the next life. Says Na Sukham, no happiness for such a person. So Arjun at this point is mentally thinking, okay, so I have to really hit the books now, hit the Vedas, understand what they are. And the very next verse that Krishna says, therefore stand up and fight. So that's how the fourth chapter ends. So the fifth chapter begins with Arjun asking Krishna. So the first verse is, Arjun said, Krishna, first of all you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So Arjun is once again, he has the same confusion that he had at the beginning of the third chapter. Because there also at the end of the second chapter, Krishna gave him seemingly contradictory instructions that do your karma, do your Gyan. And in Arjun's mind, they are both mutually exclusive. Gyan is inaction. Gyan means that you just sit and study and you mentally speculate. And karma is you go out and you act. So he says, you have given me instructions that are incompatible. And here again, because of the last two verses, Arjun is again confused. And he is asking Krishna that what is it that you want me to do? Which is more beneficial? Do you want me to renounce work? Which means do you want me to pursue the path of Gyan? or do you want me to be on the path of karma? Now there is one difference between the mood in which Arjuna has asked this question between the two chapters. So if you know, in the third chapter, Arjuna is pretty rude, right? He tells Krishna that my mind is confused by your equivocal instructions. In a way he's saying, Krishna, are you sure you know what you're doing? Equivocal means equivocating, means you speak two things with the same voice. That it's morning but it's night. So that's equivocating. That I'm sure but I'm not really sure. So he's saying you're equivocating. That you haven't given me a definite. You don't seem to be giving definite instructions. Here his mood is much more mellow. He is asking that now can you please tell me which one is really beneficial to me. There in third chapter, what Arjuna is saying is that why do you want me to be involved in this ghastly warfare? So the point he's making to Krishna is that your instructions may because of the confusion that I have about your instructions, I might do something that is ghastly. Here he is saying, tell me what is more beneficial for me. So his mood towards Krishna has become more mellow, and the reason is that between those two verses there are 80 verses that Krishna has spoken, in which he has introduced Arjuna to the concept of karma and jnana and the interplay. So Arjuna understands the two notions, at least theoretically. He hasn't fully understood it, and because Krishna hasn't fully explained, but he understands that there is karma and there is jnana and there is an interplay between the two. So at this point he is seeking for clarification. So we'll see what Krishna's answer is. The personality of God had replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotion is better than the renunciation of work. So Krishna's answer is consistent. Can you give one Bhagavad Gita to them? So Krishna's answer is the same that it was in the third chapter. That between karma and jnana, I would recommend karma. So we see this, it's not really like double talk, but like Krishna says over here that both are good, but this is better. So how do we understand this? That do you want to keep the... So how do we understand this? That how can, so they're either same or they're not, right? So like when Krishna says that they're both good, that means they're both the same. But then he says this is better, then does it mean that is he contradicting himself, or is one of the two statements incorrect? So what the acharyas explain is that these kind of statements, they should be understood in a way that the sameness is with respect to the goal, the difference is with respect to the path. So when Krishna says that karma and jnana are both the same, they are the same because they lead to the same destination. But one is better than the other because one may be easier than another to follow. So the example is that, not the example, the analogy is that, let's assume somebody wants to lose weight, right? So they go to a nutritionist, and the nutritionist says that, look, there are three ways that you can lose weight. You can either exercise, you can either diet, or you can have like surgery. And these are the three ways that you can lose weight. And the person will say that, which of the three is better. So all three are the same because ultimately they all result in the loss of weight. But one of them may be better than the other depending on the nature of the person. If a person is very active, then for that person exercise may be the way to go. If the person is austere, has good control on the senses, then maybe dieting may be the way. If the person is maybe morbidly obese or has medical issues, then maybe some kind of surgery is better. So it's not that one is better than the other than the third. It is predicated on the propensity and the time, place and circumstance. So when Krishna says that they are the same, he means that they will all lead you to spiritual realization. But at this point he is saying karma is better than Gyan based on the level of realization that Arjuna has. Arjuna does not have that level of sense control and renunciation at this point that Krishna says that give up this process of karma and go to Gyan. Because one may ask at this point that if Krishna is saying that karma is better than Gyan, then why even have Gyan as an option? Right? Then you can just say, just do karma, there is no confusion there. But the reason that option is there are people with the propensity. There are people who have the desire to intellectually engage in the study of the scriptures. And for them, Krishna would have said they're both the same, but Gyan is better. But for Arjuna, is saying that for you, karma is better.
The sannyasa or the renunciation of work is same as Gyan as per your explanation?
Yeah. So generally, like in the 4th chapter, we talked about karma and akarma. So karma is work. A karma which is not doing work is equated to the process of Gyan, mental pursuits. Okay. Next verse. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjuna. So Krishna over this is trying to explain that how karma can be considered to be the same as karma tyag. So he is saying that one who neither desires the fruits of the activities or hates it is renounced. So such a person, even though he is doing work, is renounced from the work. So he is elaborating a little bit on the fact that what is the similarity between karma and karma tyag, karma sannyas. Next verse. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, has been different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of the both. So here Krishna is saying that the reason I am saying they are the same is because they are unified in terms of where they take you. So he says a person who does not understand this and says they are different, according to Krishna, is ignorant. One who knows that the position reached by means of an analytical study can also be meant by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service on the same level, sees things as they are. Same point Krishna is making again. Merely renouncing all activities yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy, but a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So after hearing the last two verses where Krishna says they are the same, and then Arjuna might say, if they are the same, let me do Gyan. Because Arjuna at this point is inclined not to fight. So Krishna wants to make sure that Arjuna understands the point. So he reiterates the point that he made first, where he says that by merely renouncing the activities, which you say that, okay, I am not going to do any activities, but not engaging in karma. So this is a person who does only Gyan but no karma. He says such a person will not be happy. So what is Krishna's recommendation over here? That a person engaged in a thoughtful person. So thoughtful means that the person has some engagement with the process of Gyan. That a person reads and thus becomes thoughtful. That a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the Supreme Lord without delay. So the first 6 verses are essentially Krishna talking about the distinction between karma and Gyan, his recommendation that one should follow karma, and also the point that even though they are the same, they are different, they are also the same. Any questions, comments so far? Okay, so in the next set of verses, so now in the first 6 verses, Krishna has established that karma is the way. In the next set of verses, Krishna will speak about how to perform this karma. So what is the right way to do it and what is the wrong way to do it. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone and everyone is dear to him. Thus always working, such a man is never entangled. So this is the essence of Nishkam karma. So Krishna uses 3 adjectives over here to describe the person. He says the person is, in the Sanskrit you will say, the person is Vishuddhatma, Vijitatma, Jitendriya. 3 adjectives that he uses in increasing levels of realization. So the basic realization is Jitendriya. So Jitendriya is, what is Jitendriya is come? One was is victorious. So Indriya is your senses and Jit is, so one who is able to control the senses. So this is a person who has who is able to avoid performing sinful activities. The nature of the senses is that they will draw you to performing sinful activities, and Jitendriya is a person who has enough control on the senses to say that no sinful activities from you. Second is Vijitatma. So Atma means the soul, Atma also means the mind. So Vijitatma is one who controls the mind. So this is a higher level of control. More difficult than control of senses is the control of the mind. And the third is Vishuddhatma. Vishuddhatma is one of purified intelligence, whose intelligence is not contaminated. So Krishna says that one who has these 3 characteristics. So one becomes Jitendriya by understanding the nature of the material world. When one understands that the material world is basically a source of, if one exploits the material world, then it's a source of misery. So in the Padma Purana, this verse is given that dharma eva hato hanti dharmo rakshati rakshita tasma dharmo na hantavyo mano dharmo hato vadit. So dharma eva hato hanti, that dharma, which is the principles of religion, eva means only dharma can do that. Hato hanti, if you harm dharma, dharma will harm you. And dharmo rakshati rakshita, one who protects dharma is protected by dharma. And therefore the recommend, so this is, I'm sorry, it's not in Padma Purana, it is in Manusmriti. So therefore Manu's recommendation is that tasma dharma no hantavyo, therefore don't harm dharma. Mano dharmo hato vadit, and that way dharma will not harm you. So Manu is saying don't mess with dharma. Dharma is really mean. You mess with dharma, dharma will beat you up. But on the other hand, dharma rakshati rakshata, one who protects dharma, the principles of dharma, is protected by dharma. So a person who is able to control one's senses is one who is following the principles of dharma. And Vijitatma is a person who has understood the nature of the soul. So nature of the self and the soul, and that is why the person is able to control it. And Vishuddhatma, purified intelligence. How does one's intelligence become purified? So Prabhupada gives the example of how bell metal becomes gold when it comes in contact with gold. So one's intelligence gets purified when one comes in contact with Krishna, because Krishna is the purest of the pure. So so the three levels of realization is one who understands the nature of the material world, one who understands the nature of the soul, and one who understands the nature of the super soul. Such a person performs activities that are not entangling. So this verse summarizes the characteristics of the performer of Nishkam Karma.
Actually, I did not understood that how Jitendra related to understanding the material world, and how controlling the mind is related to understanding of the soul, and that part actually I did not get. How this helps,
How
how understanding, controlling the senses will make us to understand the material world. How controlling the
Okay. So the understanding there is that so this is known as Vishaya Gyan. That one who understands, and this is the point that Krishna makes later on, one who understands the nature of the material world in the sense that is dualities. That the nature of the material world is that it will give you either happiness or distress. That everything that comes from the material world is temporary. So one who understands the Vishaya, the person automatically then detaches from the Vishaya. This is, Krishna will speak more elaborately about this later on, but here is giving, so the way Krishna gives his instructions is he'll give a summary and then he'll expand on it later on. So he gives the summary of these three characteristics: that one who understands the nature of the material world, one who understands the nature of the self, and one who understands the nature of the Supreme. Such a person will not perform activities that are binding. That's why I use the word that such a person will be liberated. Yeah. Okay. So 8 and 9. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because while speaking, evacuating, receiving or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their object and that he is aloof from them. So the earlier verse was in terms of the consciousness of a person. This verse is in terms of how does it actually manifest. So the earlier is mostly more terms of what is the person thinking, and this is how is this person acting. So Krishna divides it into two categories. The first set is the knowledge receiving senses. So we have 5 senses by which we receive knowledge. So this is the eyes, the ears. By eyes we see, by ears we hear, by nose we smell, by tongue we taste, and by skin we touch. So these are the first 5 cases, and the second 5 senses are the working senses. These are the hand, the legs, the mouth, the anus and genital. So Krishna says that a person who is fully involved in these 10 senses, the 5 senses by which they are getting knowledge and by the 5 senses by which they are working, is still detached from them. So the point to note here is that Krishna is not saying that such a person detaches himself from the senses. It's not that such a person stops working, or such a person will like close the eyes and close the ears and the mouth and say, I have nothing to do with this material world. That's not the situation of such a person. He's fully involved in the material world. He's seeing, he's smelling, he's tasting, he's doing activities with his hands and legs. But because of the consciousness that he has, he is completely detached. Verse 10. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, he is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is touched by water. So this is a high level of realization. The first is the person thinks that I am not is not involved in the activities. In the second, the person thinks that I am doing only these activities for the pleasure of Krishna. So implicit in this is surrender to Krishna. So Krishna is gradually taking Arjun to a high level of realization. So this is the transition that we will see in the 5th chapter, where Krishna takes Arjun from a platform of material detachment to spiritual attachment. Because in the previous verses, Krishna has constantly been telling Arjun that you detach yourself. You act but still don't act. You don't consider yourself to be the enjoyer. Don't consider yourself to be the doer. So he is constantly asking Arjun to detach. Now from this chapter onwards, Krishna presents the second aspect of Bhagavad Gita, which is spiritual attachment. And the point that he wants to make to Arjun is both of them will have to go hand in hand. As one makes progress, one will have to make material detachments as well as spiritual attachment. Verse 11. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. So after the 10th verse of Krishna, Arjun might say that do you really think there is any point in me acting? Firstly, you say that I should act without any attachment without any senses being engaged. Now you're saying that all the activities that I'm doing, I should not even consider myself to be the enjoyer. So is that really, what's the advantages in me acting? So Krishna anticipates that question and he says that only for the purpose of purification. So this is the point that Krishna earlier also made in the 3rd chapter, where he said that even he talks about himself, he acts to set an example for others, and he said kings like Janak etc., who were completely pure, they still acted for the sake of setting an example for others and for purification. So that's the potency of karma, that it can purify even the one who is pure. So any questions, comments so far? So the 12th verse is kind of like a summary verse, and Krishna says the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So it's a summary verse in the sense that Krishna gives to Arjun the two options, that either you work with detachment, experience happiness and ultimate liberation, or you work with attachment and all that you will get is entanglement. Entanglement means that you get caught up in the cycle of birth and death. So it's kind of Krishna summarizing the essence of Nishkam Karma. Parikshit?
So I had a question in verse 10, Prabhuji. So I'm reading the translation. It says, one who performs his duty without attachment, and then the second part of it says, is unaffected by sinful action. So isn't duty by its nature not sinful? Why does it mention it's not affected by sinful action?
That's a good question. So when one performs one's prescribed duties, then the results of that karma are basically evaluated in that context, right? But karma is karma. Prabhupada would say all karma is bad, whether it is prescribed or unprescribed, because it will always give you some reactions. So Arjun, as a soldier, is killing. He will have some reactions, but they're different from what somebody who is not a soldier is killing. So karma always has reactions. The reaction is because of the attachment to karma. Right. So there is the only good karma is akarma, when you perform with complete detachment. Like another example that is given is that in a grahastha, when food is being cooked, then sin is being committed at the time, because even if a person is vegetarian, you're still killing plants. As soon as you light fires, because of the fire, so many living entities die at the same time. The process of digestion that causes the death of so many living entities, and this is also not karma that you are consciously performing, but just by virtue of that, there is so many sins getting accrued. So that is why when we cook something, we offer to Krishna, because then Krishna accepts it and takes away the sinful reactions for that. That helps? Malaka?
This, with reference to this, when we are cooking vegetarian, then also we are killing. I think somewhere I saw on the video or read it.
You saw in Google?
No. Somewhere, why vegetarianism? They say like if people let's say we are having fruits, so we are not actually killing the plant, because the fruit might fall on the ground, and so we are not just actually uprooting and killing the plant. So is that correct, or like?
So that's correct. See, like you see, so it's all degrees. Question is, like, if you eat fruits, then that you're not really killing, because the plant gives up the fruits on its own. So you're not killing. So there's degrees of karma there. Like the Jains, right? They won't eat anything that is a root, because it automatically involves killing the plant. You uproot the plant. So they'll eat, that's why they have that, but ultimately there is still violence. You light a fire, there's violence. The process of digestion has violence. So it's like you have you may have, instead of so much, you may have little less or little less, but karma is karma. It's always there.
One thing, Prabhuji, that comes to mind is when you clean the house, you end up in the process killing
Yes.
insects and the
Yeah.
bacteria, and you try to disinfect things as killing organisms.
Yeah. In the Bhagavatam it is said that Jiva Jivanam Jivasya, that the nature of the material world is that one living entity lives by killing the other living entity. That's the nature of the material world. So we of course try and minimize it. So we won't say Jiva Jivanam Jivasya and we kill animals and eat them, that, because we try and minimize it. But really speaking, the only way to become disconnected with karma is by getting connected with Krishna. That's that automatically gets us disconnected from the karmic reactions.
I heard something about the classification of human as per their course. Like she said, the people who is eating fruits and wastage of trees or something, like the roots, which is not killing any animals, one level of human. Then who is eating plants, who doesn't have a reaction, and it will cut a plant nearby another plants will not be affected. And then the third level is like if you kill a goat or chicken, then other animal, that kind of animal will not affected. So then again, if you kill a human, the next to the human, he will emotionally be affected. So this is like end of that like cannibals, bad people, and I don't know, it's like authentic or something, but I heard someone speaking.
Right. There's definitely like gradations in it, that you can perform. The way karma is that you can either perform less sinful activities or more sinful activities, but the nature of karma is that it's binding. Right. Even the best case scenario, that you perform completely pious activities, even that is binding. because you are forced to take another birth just to enjoy the results of those pious activities. So if you're a person very charitable by nature, who given a lot of money in charity, done a lot of service, so you accrued a lot of pious activities. But then how do you enjoy that pious activities? You get another body to enjoy the pious activity. So that way you keep coming back over and over again to either enjoy the pious activities you have done or suffer the sinful activities that you have done. Good question. Anything else?
I was curious about the duties, duties change, for example, when Arjuna was fighting, he was killing the soul, other human beings, which is, Krishna said, no, you don't do the killing. So depending upon the duty, it changes. Same way like a son who is doing a duty of going to college, and he has to study so much, and that's it. And we say you should not be studying all the time, you should rest your mind a little bit, So, but he's doing a duty of a student, So I don't know what is, duty changes from time to time.
Right, and that's why it's known as Swadharma, that it is as per the Varna and the Ashram, your duty changes. For a Brahmachari, duty is different from a Grahastha. For a Grahastha, the duty is different from a sannyasi, right? For a Brahman, the duty is different as opposed to a Kshatriya. And that's where the notion of the prescribed duty is. So the prescribed duties are not absolute, they are relative. They are relative to your Varna and your Ashram. And third chapter, Krishna makes this point, that by understanding what your prescribed duty, because at that point he is trying to raise Arjuna from the notion of what he thinks is sinful activities to that they are not really sinful activities. So he is saying that in this war you will be killing, you are a Kshatriya and it's a duty to fight. So there is no explicit sin that is attached, but the nature of karma is that it is binding. So Krishna takes Arjuna down this path gradually. He first introduces him he first gets him from the notion of this is sinful, don't do it. From sinful to piety, right? And then from piety, he gets him to a higher platform of material detachment. From material detachment, he gets him to a higher platform of spiritual attachment. From spiritual attachment, he gets him to the highest platform of exclusive attachment to Krishna. But he doesn't say that right away. He takes Arjuna through the path so that by the time that he reaches the final path, Arjuna has seen the different aspects of one's existence and is able to appreciate the relative advantages and disadvantages. Because if I just come and tell you something, there will be always in your mind that is this it? What about this? What about that? Right? So Krishna wants to make sure that he addresses and through Arjuna he is actually addressing our doubts. So he wants to make sure that he addresses all our doubts. So that's why he gets us gradually to the path of Shuddha Bhakti, which is where Krishna wants to get us to. By the time that he reaches the 12th chapter, he introduces it at that time, but he makes sure that he shows us what the lay of the land is. Yeah, that helps? Yeah. Vikas?
Very basic question, what do you really mean by karma? We're talking about as per the Varna, Varna Ashram, it's your duties, right?
Yeah.
But that is just if I take my example, so if I'm just doing my job,
Yeah.
Correctly, without any attachment, am I fulfilling my karma, or what about my personal duties, which my Dasa Ashram duties, or my any other duties?
Yeah. It's a good question. The reason we are discussing this is because it's in the Bhagavad Gita, but in the current day and age, a clear understanding of what the duties are is not very easy for us to ascertain. In the earlier times, the society was much more structured. There was the varnas, there were the ashrams, there were the gurus who would guide right from the beginning to the end. So there was this clear understanding There was this clear sense of submission to the scripture, submission to the authority. So that is why one always knew what was one's duty at a particular point of time. Mahabharata, you see this coming a lot. When the Pandavas were in the exile in the forest, then at one point they meet a sage, and the sage says that, how are you moving around just like that in the forest? You should get a Brahman along with you to guide you. And they say that we are in the forest. What to guide? All we do is hang around in the forest. And he says, no. Your existence will be spoiled. So that's why they go and they take shelter of Dhaumya. And then Dhaumya becomes kind of the Purohit. He goes and he guides them through, and they ask him questions. So the process was very formal and systematic during the earlier ages. Right now, we don't even have access to the entire scriptures. So the process itself is fraught with a lot of uncertainty. And that is why, for us, we follow the path of bhakti. Yeah?
So we just may follow, we perform the duties as prescribed in Bhakti Yoga?
So as per Bhakti Yoga, we perform our duties for the pleasure of Krishna. Right? So you work, and what do you do with what you get out of your work? You go to your house, you worship your deity, you give some money in charity, you serve the Vaishnavas, you take care of your child's future so that your child becomes Krishna conscious. So every activity that you do, whether it is work, whether it is taking care of your wife, of your parents, they're all centered around how can I please Krishna, right? And then that's how they become automatically purified. Okay, so we may not be able to finish the chapter, but we'll do the next set of 4 verses, and then we'll have some discussion, and then after that we'll do it next week. So verse 13, when the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. So Krishna is describing the position of a person who is following the process of Nishkam karma. So he is embodied. That is why there is karma. Karma only comes for the embodied soul living in the city of 9 gates. So the city of 9 gates is our body. The 9 gates are the 9 openings of the body. The 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nose, the mouth, the anus and genital. These are the 9 openings. So this is the city of 9 gates in which the Jiva is living, and because he is acting on the platform of knowledge, he is neither working nor causing work to be done. So Krishna is also introducing Arjun to this point because he wants Arjun to understand that I have been talking about karma so far. You need to understand who does this karma. So the obvious, so if I would ask you who is doing all this karma, what would your answer be? Take a guess. If you know the answer, don't answer me. But if you don't know the answer, who would you say? What would your answer be? Who is doing all this karma? Yours, the soul, right? So that's the obvious connection, that the soul is doing all the actions. So Krishna is introducing first Arjun to the soul. That within this body of 9 gates is the soul that is living in this body of 9 gates, that in case of Nishkam karma is not performing any activities. The next verse is, the embodied spirit, master of the city of this body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So Krishna is making the point that the soul is not doing any activities. All the activities are done by the modes of material nature. So he is taking Arjun down this path that you may think that all these activities are done by the soul, but actually the soul is not doing any activities. And there is of course a deeper philosophical understanding behind it, that the soul by nature is Sat Chit and Anand. It is completely spiritual. So if we were to say that the soul is doing the activities, then all the activities would also be completely spiritual. There would be no material activities, and all spiritual activities by nature are pure. So if we were to anchor our understanding on the conception that the soul is doing the activities, then either we have to say that all these activities are pure, or we have to say that the soul is contaminated. Both of them are not acceptable. In the second chapter, Krishna made this point that the soul is eternal, unchangeable. He goes on and on. He says, the soul can never be cut to pieces, can never be dried, can never be burnt, never changes, avyayam, eternal. So the soul cannot change, and the soul is completely pure. So that means the soul is not doing the activities. So who is doing the activities? The modes of material nature. How do we see the modes of material nature? The modes of material nature is our swabhav, right? So what is our swabhav? Some of us are by nature introverted. Some of us are extroverted. Some of us like to work hard. Some of us like to not work hard. Some of us like some kind of work, other kind of work. All of us have different propensities, and based on the propensities, we are acting. So all this work is being done by the modes of material nature. Now what Arjun might say is that, but the modes of material nature are inert. In this whole world, there are only two sentient beings. There is Krishna and there is Jiva. Everything else is inert. The whole material world, the modes of material nature, heat, light, everything else is inert. There are only two sentient beings, Krishna and the Jiva. So Arjun might say that you have just said that the Jiva is not doing, so maybe Krishna is doing all this work. So in response to that, Krishna speaks the next verse, verse 15. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers the real knowledge. So he is saying that don't think I am doing all this work. I am not doing it. And he is saying people who think like that are ignorant. In the earlier ways he did not say ignorant. Now he says they are ignorant, because Krishna wants to disambiguate this conception. So many times people, and empirically we see that in people, many times people will say जो कर रहा है भगवान कर रहा है, सब कुछ भगवान की मर्जी से हो रहा है, क्या कर रहे हैं हम लोग. If you somebody does, you go to somebody and say that why don't you do this, जब भगवान कराएगा तब हो जाएगा, right? So they are basically saying कि भगवान की मर्जी से सब कुछ हो रहा है. So Krishna wants to say no, not by me. Or sometimes people will say is that ऐसा तो होता ही नहीं, हमसे होगा नहीं ऐसा, I will not be able to do this, which means that what they are saying is that my swabhav will not allow me to do it, right? I remember I had gone to India. I was telling one of my cousins that you sit and he was going through some kind of anxiety, and I said you sit and chant. He said I can't sit, can't chant, not possible for me. He says और कुछ करा लो मेरे से तुम. I can go to the temple, I can put flowers over there, and if you want I can do parikrama. So I say you do parikrama and chant. He said I can't chant. It's not in my nature. So person basically what he is saying is that the modes of material nature do not permit it. So the reason that Krishna is introducing this okay.
I have a question. So it's the modes of material nature that are the cause of all the actions and all. Then when we carry the karma, it is the soul that has to carry the karma, correct?
Not the soul, the subtle body.
The subtle body.
Yeah. The soul never changes, regardless of how many pious or sinful activities that we do. The soul never changes. But when we come to the material world, we get a subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego, and that is the one that carries all our pious and sinful reactions in us. So the reason that
But the subtle body is part of the soul only, right? I mean, it's covering the soul.
it is
It
it
has
carries.
acquired the growth, but it is covering the soul, right? In the material world.
Yes, yes, but it is distinct from the soul.
Yeah.
It's distinct from the soul.
So the subtle body is not spiritual, right?
Subtle body is material. It's material. Yeah. So the reason that Krishna is also making this point is to develop this two understandings in us. One is develop a sense of humility. That many times if we do something and we say we're so great, we did this. Nobody can do this as good as I can do. But if you have this understanding, activities are not done by us, but they're done by the modes of material nature, will naturally develop humility with respect to that. Second thing is that Krishna is making this point that these modes of material nature are very powerful. Be very careful how you associate with them. They are the real doers. It's kind of like think of it like this way, that like you're flying from DC to Delhi, and you have a choice to fly by Aeroflot or by Lufthansa. You fly by Aeroflot, 50% chance you'll show up at the destination. But, the engine falls down. The pilots sometimes are drunk. So, but it's your choice, right? You can fly Aeroflot or you can fly Lufthansa, right? Once you get on the plane, you can't change your mind. You can't say that this pilot doesn't seem to know what he's doing, so can I jump into the different flight? So be very careful which flight you take, because that is the one that may deliver you, or it may be the one that will crash you. Right? So same way Krishna is saying, be very careful about the modes that you associate with, because they're very powerful. Because of the influence of the modes, your activities are decided. Because of the activities, your future birth, your ability to enjoy and suffer is decided. Krishna wants Arjuna and us to understand these 2 points. That is why the majority of the scriptures talk about elevating oneself to the modes of goodness. The majority of the scriptures don't talk about bhakti. They actually talk about how can one elevate oneself to the mode of goodness, because when one once is situated in the mode of goodness, then the possibility of the person taking to bhakti is more. So if a person is like a drunkard, taking drugs and gambling, etc., even though he could take to bhakti, but it is unlikely that he will take to it. A person who is a Brahman, leading a regulated life, austere life, more likelihood for the person to take to the process of bhakti.
Yeah, what I want to know is material energies / Maya is same as the material modes, 3 modes of material nature, or there's a difference somewhere?
It's a good question. So the modes of material nature are the agency that is used by Maya Devi to control us. Right? So the modes is what is actually is actually, so to speak, our immediate boss. Right? In any organization, you have an immediate boss, and then you have a boss's boss, and further up there. Modes of material nature are immediate boss. They are the ones who are actually directing our day-to-day activities, our second-to-second activities. But the modes of material nature are in turn, they are controlled by Maya Devi. So they ultimately, so to speak, report to Maya Devi. But Maya Devi also has many other things that she uses to create this whole, Prabhupada would say, this whole phantasmagoria, that through the agency of Maya Devi, we feel that this is a place of happiness for us. Through the agency of Maya Devi, even though we see everybody around us dying, we think that we are immortal. So this is all through the agency of Maya Devi. She has many energies, but they fall in two categories. One is covering and the other is throwing. So by covering, she makes you forget Krishna. By throwing, she punishes you. So one of her duties is also to make us understand that how difficult it is to live in this material world. So through these two agencies, she gives us the material world experience. So, okay. Which verse did we do?
We finished 18.
You finished 15.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll do 16. That will be the last verse. When however one is enlightened with knowledge by which nations is destroyed, then this knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So Krishna has given Arjun two important nuggets of input, or rather three important nuggets of information. As a jiva, you are not the doer. As Krishna, I am not the doer. All activities are being done by the modes of material nature. And now he is talking about what are the advantages of, because knowledge is only useful if it has any practical aspect of it. So he says, with this knowledge, your ignorance is destroyed. So the ignorance is in terms of who is actually doing. The ignorance is people thinking that God is doing everything. The ignorance is people thinking that I am doing everything. And as that is destroyed, one goes more to the platform of Nishkam Karma. And through that, good fortune is automatically attracted. So beginning from the 17th verse onwards, Krishna describes the symptoms of, so the 17th verse is what is called a swing verse. So till the 16th verse, Krishna in this chapter is talking about material detachment. 17th verse talks about material detachment and spiritual attachment. And after that, the rest of the verses are all about spiritual attachment. So you'll see Krishna's mood changes after that. Instead of saying don't, he is now do. He like initially says don't get into this material world, don't follow your senses, don't think you're the doer. Now he says that do this, do understand the nature of the Supreme, do develop a relationship with him, do surrender to him. So the mood is more of instead of prohibitions, it becomes more of injunctions. Yeah. So we have a few minutes for questions. Ali?
See, one thing that came to mind was that the verse 16 was almost a mirror reflection of the last verse of chapter 3, where from Prakrite Kriyamanani.
Absolutely.
And then towards the end, the last verse is that knowledge will help you overcome lust.
Yes.
So just came to mind, it was exactly what you repeated.
Yes, you're right, and it's interesting that you picked that up. That the first part of the 5th chapter is very closely follows the 3rd chapter, because Krishna is when Krishna speaks. So this is the 4th time in the Bhagavad Gita Krishna is speaking about Nishkam Karma. He started speaking about in the 2nd chapter. He spoke in the 3rd chapter. He spoke in the 4th chapter. Now this is the 4th time that he's speaking, and the last time that he speaks about Nishkam Karma. But you'll see the same set of instructions coming, but with more depth and with more context added to them. So in the 3rd chapter, when Krishna is talking about Nishkam Karma, he's talking about detachment. See, like the difference, the title of the 3rd chapter is Karma Yoga. The title of the 5th chapter is Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So 3rd chapter is about material detachment, the 5th chapter is about spiritual attachment. Right? So even though they are the same, but the motivation changes a little bit. You may do something because of a sense of duty, or you may do something because of love for somebody. So the action may be the same, but the motivation is different. So this is where you see that the motivation is beginning from the 17th verse. Krishna now starts. He does not come himself, but he starts introducing the spiritual conception. He starts with the Brahman first, and then he takes Arjun further down. That's a good point that you picked up. Anything else?
You said
Yes, sir.
that soul does not do any activity. I agree with you. They don't do any activity, but they trigger activity. For example, you go to a store and you like it something very well, and the guy wants to do the shoplifting, but the soul says no, that's wrong. So soul is triggering the activity.
That's not the soul, that's the super soul. So if you look at the 14th verse, Krishna says that does not create activities, does not induce people to act, nor does create the fruits of action. So there are three natures in which the activities are done. A person may do an activity, a person may induce somebody else to do an activity, or a person may get attached to the fruits of the activity. And Krishna uses three negations. The soul doesn't do activities, the soul doesn't delegate anybody to do activities, the soul does not get involved in the fruits of the activities. All of this is done by the modes of material nature. So what you're saying is that something inside you tells you don't do it. This is it's spoken more about in the 15th chapter, where Krishna introduces the concept of Paramatma. That Krishna as the super soul is sitting inside you, and as a Chaitya Guru, and he's trying to guide you. Don't do this. Don't do this. This is sinful. This is the right thing to do. That's not the soul, right? It's because if the soul itself was guiding itself, right, then there is no duality over there, right? One can't guide oneself. One will either act or guide. Somebody outside has to guide you, and that is Krishna as Paramatma. Yeah, good point. Yes, Ravipur?
If we are soul is not the sufferer, and if matter is immanent, then actually who is the sufferer?
So the same point that is made, that it is because of the association that the soul has with matter. So think of it this way, that you go to watch a movie, right, and it's a horror movie, so you get scared, but you're not in the movie, right? There are different characters in the movie, but because you yourself voluntarily are associating with everything that is happening in the movie. When something scary happens, then you get scared because you're voluntarily getting involved in that movie, right? Now nobody will say that you acted in that movie or all the events in the movie were happening around your life. Even a person of simple intelligence will say it's not there. But why is all that happening? Because you yourself have voluntarily you have become involved in that movie, right? So when the soul, it voluntarily associates with matter, then it takes on the enjoyment and the sufferings of the matter. Even though the soul itself is not really, when the body is hurt, the soul doesn't get hurt, right? Or when the body is feeling happy, the soul doesn't really get any nourishment out of it. But because of the close association with matter, it assumes that role.
But in a way we are suffering, right?
Depends on who we is.
We mean soul.
So from a Sankhya perspective, so from an analytical perspective, no, the soul is not suffering. From an experiential perspective, because the soul is associating with matter, it is suffering. Right. So you have to just understand it, whether you're talking from the perspective of being almost like mathematically correct, right? The soul, when you watch a movie, nothing happens to you, right? That is the truth. But you can come out of the movie and say, that I was crying through the movie. It was a really sad. It was it's a really sad movie, and and that just means that that is also the truth, that you just got involved in the movie so much that you experienced whatever vicariously. Yeah.
Because the experience is really what we are looking for, that experiential happiness. That's why we don't want to be in this world. Because analytically, although we are not suffering, because experientially we are suffering, that is the reason we want to get out of this world. That is how I should understand.
Okay, if it helps you.
Prabhuji, there's always this saying of the old soul that you're born, your body is temporary, but your soul, and you accumulate deeds and you accumulate, like, oh, you accumulated this from your previous birth, you must have done good things in your previous birth to enjoy benefits in this birth. For no rhyme or reason, you're born in a
rich family or a poor family.
Poor family. Then what would that be? That is not the soul?
That's the subtle body.
That's
the subtle body. So the subtle body is carrying the soul from one gross body to another, from one life to another, and through the agency of the subtle body is all these arrangements for suffering and enjoyments that are done. So any time that you see things like the point you're making, that one soul is born in a rich family and enjoys, another is born in a poor family. Why? Because of previous karma is there. Because of previous karma, the subtle body has a lot of pious activities, pious reactions that it has accrued, and because of that it gives you the opportunity to enjoy. And ultimately, so karma is like making deposits or withdrawals in a bank account. Ultimately, karma, both good and bad, gets expunged, right? So when you take birth in a good family, then your good karma starts getting depleted, right? And as you enjoy more and more of your good karma gets depleted. Like in the Gita, it is said that the one who has performed a lot of pious activities gets the position of a demigod, a deva. But after living for a long life, when all the karma has been expunged, they fall back down to the earth. So even they lose their karma. And similarly, any suffering that we are doing, as we go through the suffering, our sinful activities, they are being expunged. So there is an end to both. There is an end to enjoyment and there is an end to suffering also. But the only constant is that we are constantly bound to this cycle of birth and death. That's the only constant. Whether it is through happiness or distress, we keep taking birth, we keep dying, and we keep taking birth again, which is from a spiritual perspective, which is the greatest misfortune of the soul, to get caught in this material world and the cycle of birth and death. Okay. One last question, okay?
I'll ask you.
Okay.
Okay, kids. Go.